Welcome to Season 5 of SEL in EDU. This is a space for educators who believe social emotional learning isn't an add on, it's part of how we teach, lead, and show up every day. I'm Dr. Krista Lay, and in each episode, we'll explore real stories, practical strategies, and the human side of learning that helps schools grow with intention.
What happens after perspective shifts? In the second conversation with longtime educator and mentor Thom Stecher, we move from seeing differently to living differently. Together, we explore how awareness becomes action, how pausing opens possibility, and why the space between stimulus and response is where growth begins. Thom shares stories that stretch the idea of possibility, from career leaps into the unknown to raising his daughter Ashley, whose life reframed what healing, love, and purpose truly mean. If perspective is the lens, possibility is the doorway. And this episode invites you to step through it with courage, compassion, and intention. We are back with episode 2 of SEL and EDU with Thom Stecher.
Hello, everybody.
And if they remember, we were talking about this series being about the 4 Ps: perspective and perception, possibility, passion, and ending with a purpose. And we're ready to shift and move our conversation now into how our perspectives open up or can sometimes close possibility to us. So, Tom, in our last conversation, we talked about perspective is foundational, helps us interpret our experiences, emotions, and who we are as individuals. When we're open to having our perspectives shift, what do you notice changes first in yourself or in others?
So when I am aware, and that's a key word here, awareness, that my perspective is shifting, it's moving because everything about us is malleable, like a lump of clay that can be formed and moved. The first thing that happens with me is I have the aha, the light bulb goes off. That's the first sign of awareness for me. That's exciting. So I have this elevation. Here's where we have choice again. Choice is woven all through these 4 Ps. I have this elevation, this aha. I enjoy moving to the next step, which is waking up, becoming more aware. My awareness has expanded. My worldview has expanded because of some interaction or event in my world. The other option is I can ignore that. I can make excuses. I can minimize. I can say, I'm too busy. I'm tired. Not today. Someday and I've done that. I am simply aware that when my perspective shifts, that for me is the universe giving me a message. It's an invitation. Tom, do you want to grow? Do you want to be more tomorrow than you are today? And I enjoyed that at my age, 73. I'm trying to move more and more in that direction.
Yeah. And as you're talking, I'm thinking about some of my critical aha moments where I've
Mhm.
seen possibilities. And sometimes I have seen them as missed opportunities. I sometimes get myself into what I would call a shame spiral of like, "Oh
Mm.
gosh, I should have seen this before." And I kind of beat myself up about it for a little
Yep.
bit. Now that I'm aware of that, I work really hard to move out of that because that doesn't move me anywhere. It keeps me in the same spot.
Beautiful.
And I try to move towards that action like, okay, now I see these new possibilities. Now we need to act on it, like you said.
So for you, when you get in that shame spiral, we're all human. We all get there at some point in our life. You mentioned the word should. I should do this. I should. One of my great mentors in my life, Dr. Yvonne Kay, has this phrase, don't should on yourself. As much as I want to care for others, we have to first care for ourselves and get past that old puritanical mindset of I'm being selfish. No, I've got to take care of me so I don't should on myself.
I love that word beckoning.
Me too.
It feels very invitational, like, there's to me, it relates to passion and purpose, so I really wanna come back to that word
Okay,
in our
okay.
later pieces and pull on some of those threads.
I am absolutely firmly convinced that the universe is always doing that. It's always beckoning us forward. It's always giving us opportunities for growth. And we, as living organisms, are growth oriented. If we weren't, we'd still be curled up in a fetal position, sucking our thumb.
I think about this idea of the learning process. We go from not knowing something to seeing things differently, and so perspective taking is the act of learning something new that we didn't know before for whatever reason, and now that you see new possibilities, you have responsibility, you have choices. We talked about choice in the last session, the space between stimulus and response, and you talked about Viktor Frankl and
Yes.
how he talks about what is needed of me right now. We move from having an awareness to action, from survival.
Yeah.
How do we move from this is where I'm at right now to this is what's possible into taking action?
So you mentioned Frankel, and he's one of my great role models. If our friends have not read Man's Search for Meaning, please do. Read the first half. The second half is about his theories of psychotherapy. Again, stimulus and response. Between stimulus and response, there is a gap. In that gap, we have a choice. That's the choice moment. What are our options? Our options are countless, limitless. One of the things I've learned from Frankel, and I think I'm quoting him now, he talked about in that moment, it's a mindset check. Is this unavoidable suffering or a God ordained opportunity? What's the choice? Do I want to say, okay, now what can I do? Which, of course, is what Frankel did. Now, what's being asked of me? He found that was the empowering piece, the piece that lifted him up. We're talking about a guy in Auschwitz. If he can dare to think that, if he can dare use the word responsibility, if he can dare to take that responsibility, my only formula that I've ever remembered in life is not a math formula, it's Jack Canfield, E plus R equals O. The events of life plus how I respond to those events gives me the ultimate outcome. So in this choice moment, how will I respond? And then when you mention the word responsibility, that throws me right back to our teachers, right back to our educator friends. I believe we have a responsibility. As you know, my mom was a kindergarten teacher. She was teaching these lessons in kindergarten about how we respond and the choices we make every single moment. I actually doubt that she did, but everything's a teachable moment. And I think that that's critically important that we weave that into our curriculum. And again, responsibility for our educator friends. I'm trying to think if I can remember this quote. Great teacher. He said, I've come to the frightening conclusion that I am the decisive element in the classroom. I can make a child's life miserable or joyful. I can be a tool of torture or an instrument of inspiration. I can hurt, humiliate, and heal. In all situations, it is my response that decides whether a child's life will be humanized or dehumanized.
Yeah.
May not have power over the politics, but when we close that door and we're there with those children, we have that power to influence, uplift, and empower.
So I just had an aha hearing
Please.
you share. And I also want people to know this is the power of leaning in continually. You and I have been friends and you've been my mentor for 20 plus years. I've learned E plus R equals O from you and about Viktor Frankl from you and the value that teachers have in how we respond to students from hearing you. It reminds me to slow down, to move from perspective to possibility. We need to slow down so that we can recognize and access those teachable moments. We are going at the speed of light to cover curriculum, we're going to miss those opportunities that are those teachable moments because we're going from event to event to event, not accessing that really quick second of response to do something differently.
Yeah. All that you're saying is powerful. So for me, as I listen to you, we now take the world of possibilities into wellness practice for our educator friends, the professionals. There are some dear friends of mine, one of them who passed recently, brilliant psychiatrist, and she believed that educators now are suffering from post-traumatic stress, and it's an ongoing stress cycle. Back in the day, we would have a stressful event, and then human beings would get to relax and to reflect. And what did I learn from this? But today, it's one thing after the other. And our brains are not designed for that. So your recommendation to pause is so important. And as some of our friends do, teach the classroom to pause. Whether it means putting a timer on at 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and or some people use a bell, whatever it might be, but that pause is incredible. Go ahead.
I had 2 thoughts come up, and one is that pause that allows us to shift into an action that maybe we hadn't intended. So, I was working at a middle school a couple weeks ago, and one of the male teachers there was talking about how he had read a Mel Robbins book. She's really known right now for the let
Yep,
them theory, but she
yep.
also has a theory, but like when you wake up in the morning and you don't wanna get out of bed, you do a countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, act.
Wow.
And that resets your brain and gets you to
Mm,
a point of action, which could help going back to what you said originally about, like, the excuses we have for not doing something. That 5-second countdown gives you the pause and an opportunity to reset an action to move yourself forward, and it reminds me of a personal practice about 5 years ago I wanted to get better at, and our dear friend, mutual friend, Tracy Holland, me realize
oh, yeah.
when I get very passionate about a topic or a subject, I move faster and really needed to work on slowing down and specifically with wait time. And so even in my own practices,
Mm,
working on a 3-second pause. And so that's a strategy that teachers could use in their
mm.
classroom. How do I get better at a 3-second pause after asking a question? How do I put purposeful pauses to look at this alliteration? Purposeful pauses for increased possibilities.
Love it. So you now sharing with our teacher friends that are listening, all of our educator friends, that whether it's first thing in the morning, whether it's the moment I'm teaching, you are often going fast because you're enjoying it.
Yeah.
Me too. When I'm teaching, it's like my favorite thing to do in life. And I am aware sometimes I go too fast for the students because I'm sharing something I've shared countless times before. They're hearing it for the first time. So this idea of a 3-second pause is very powerful. So whether it's a timer, whether it's a piece of music, whether it's a bell, whether it's a 3-second pause, whether it's a deep breath, those breathing cycles that we're taught, but just breathe.
Just learned from Deb Driscoll. I'm starting to work with her in another area of my life. She let me know, and I didn't realize this, in breathing, you can use any combination of breath that you want, but your exhale has to be longer than your inhale. I've heard of box breathing, 4 beats in, hold for 2, let out for 6 or 7. You said it can be any combination that feels good for you as long as your exhales are longer than your inhales.
Let's do something here. There's going to be some quiet time. I want my listeners to do this too. Let's breathe in for 4 seconds. Ready? And breathe out. Perfect. So we just breathed in for 4, then we breathed out for 6. Just allow yourself, especially on the exhalation, longer on the exhalation, and Be aware to the signals of relaxation your body is sending you. Many of us are going so fast, we have no idea what it means for our body to relax.
Yeah. There's all of this research that shows when we are stressed, we limit possibilities for ourselves.
Mm,
Our emotions and, like, look at
mhm,
me, like, actually going through my notes here. I'm like, positive
mhm.
psychology research shows that your positive emotions broaden your thinking, helping you to see more options and possibilities. When we are stressed, when we're feeling uncomfortable emotions, I also try to think of it as like not positive and negative emotions, but like comfortable. In the uncomfortableness, we're shrinking our ability to see possibilities. And so this breathing, this pausing creates possibilities.
So you talked about broadening, and Dr. Barbara Fredrickson, in her 2 books, but the one I like best is Love 2.0, has her theory of broaden, build and broaden, which for her is the antidote to stress. And you just said it, we shrink ourselves, we tighten ourselves up. And again, that's almost like this rat maze we're on. Faster, faster, do more, do more. And we're in this culture, we're kinda taught that really young if you do more. You're a better you if you do it faster. It's like, no, not at all. And having you and I being introverts, the extrovert gets most of the airtime. And now we're learning, because of the work of Susan Cain, how important our introverts are. Again, my extrovert friends, we love you as well. And think about all those kiddos in the classroom. Who are some of those quiet ones that need a little more time, or maybe we even come back and visit something with them in a day or 2. Maybe they would prefer a pair and share rather than a larger group.
There was something you and I talked about years ago when we were working in a district in central PA. I forget the name of it. It's where you hear about a theory or you learn something in one context, but when you leave, it goes out the door. Remember us saying, "Oh my gosh, we just talked about this in this room," and the students walk out the door, down the hallway, and do exactly what we talked about not doing.
It's called the power of context. One of the things that brings us to another favorite topic of mine, which I think is connected to possibilities. Dr. Willard Daggett has this beautiful model of rigor, relevance, and relationships. And power of context ties into the relevance piece. Is what we're teaching relevant to our children's lives? And how do I make the Civil War relevant to my children's lives? Well, today you can almost pick any topic you want and it's relevant to what's happening in our world. The responsibility of the educators to bring that in, to help it be explicit in the hearts and minds of our children.
And the way that we can do that is by tapping into what do you think people were feeling? What was their perspective? What was the context that influenced them to act or take that action? And so those are the SEL skills we can connect to. And this is what empathy is. We don't have to
Mm.
be in that exact time, but can we connect to the situation, the emotion, the context?
And there's no greater example on possibilities than the Gettysburg Address by Abraham Lincoln. That short address was all about possibilities that he believed was possible in this nation, that he believed was possible in each of us human beings. When he ended by talking about the better angels of ourselves. So, perspective, possibilities, and as we move further, it's in every area.
So what you've just said about the Gettysburg Address reminds me of something I wanted to mention earlier. In teaching history, used to review and dissect the Gettysburg Address every year. But are we open to the possibilities that there's still new learning to come? Earlier, I had this aha from hearing your story that reminded me of something I had not connected to before. When people say, I've heard this already, or we've studied this already,
Uh,
you may have, but you are
yes.
also a different person with new experiences with a new perspective that can open up new possibilities. So don't ever shut off something because, oh, I've heard this before. Maybe not in that context.
So you have just shared with our teacher friends, our educators, what is possible in the classroom. We can open up whole new worlds in dialogue, in conversation. So the possibilities are endless. That's what's so exciting about this. And as you're sharing, when we can bring our classroom into a emotionally safe, trusting community, this is the rich conversation that unfolds. We can go back to something that you taught countless times, the Gettysburg Address, and have an old man who's listening at 73 saying, I want to hear that lesson. I want to dig into that lesson. That's what's possible here.
Just need to stick on this, that better angels part. I need to go back and review this again and think about how that applies to me right now. The work that I'm doing and the life that I'm living and the actions that I could take to open up possibilities. You mentioned new worlds. Would you add to that?
Yeah, I think the first thing that comes to my mind, I'm going to go personal now. I first need to be willing to sacrifice who I am for the possibility of what I might become.
Okay, can you say that one more time?
Yeah, I thought about this. I need to be willing to sacrifice who I am for what I believe I will become. In my mind, that's called growth. That's called learning. There is absolutely risk involved. You don't get out of this life without risk. We just need to make sure the risk is worth the gain, weighing it out. We have our comfort zone. Imagine a circle, right? We have our comfort zone. And then just outside that comfort zone, it's surrounded by another circle. Let's call it the learning zone, the risk zone, the growth zone. But then, of course, outside of that is the panic zone. We don't want to go there. It's just baby steps forward. So I'm sacrificing who I am right now. When I read a book, I'm sacrificing who I am right now. When I have a conversation with a trusted friend, as we're doing right now, I'm sacrificing who I am right now because there's always that part of me. Stay open, Tom. You're going to learn something new today. What do I believe is possible? Possibilities. What do I believe? What are my dreams? What are the things that are out there and accessible to me? It's all about staying open. It comes back to choice again.
When I think back to being a teenager and my 4 years in high school were very interesting. I made some poor choices in ninth and 10th grade, got myself in some trouble, not in school per se, but
Mhm.
at home with my parents. And then I had like a turnaround where I don't want my next 2 years to be like this.
Okay.
But I very clearly remember feeling like there wasn't a future. There weren't possibilities that me happy or content or feel good. I think this is part of the reason why I wanted to work in secondary. Remember feeling very confused. And even though on the outside it looked fine, I've always been very self aware, almost to a fault. But I remember having those moments of thinking, I don't see something that I like or that I want to go toward. My life was good in comparison to what I know many of the students are going through today.
Yeah.
I had that very visceral feeling. I can't imagine what some of that feels like for them. And so I think about our role as educators and opening up possibilities for our students when they're in spaces where developmentally their prefrontal cortex is not letting them see those pieces, where their situation or context might not open up pathways for them. We talked about hope last time, the willpower and the way power, and how you need both to take action to move forward.
First of all, I want to acknowledge your strength, the choices you made at around 15 years old. And I want to acknowledge that's not the norm. Good for you. To our friends who are listening, this is where they have so much power. The relationship piece, the building of relationship. When they see those young women, when they see those young men struggling, maybe it's behavioral, maybe it's academic, maybe it's health, whatever it might be. Maybe they see them less involved than they used to be. It's time to act, adult. It's
Mm.
time to intervene. It's time to reach out. We cannot expect as adults for children to come to us. That's very rare for a child to have that courage, very rare. We need to go to them where they are. And this is part of an expertise that is more yours than mine, developmental relationships and how important they are in building these children. And today, I imagine, because I don't use a smartphone, but I can imagine the kids, they must have this kind of unconscious tap on their shoulder, metaphorically, all the time. And that's exhausting.
You said something about the developmental relationships
Yes.
a moment ago,
Yes.
and that I'm currently working with an organization that is primarily in Illinois, but working into other areas,
Mhm,
like
mhm.
some in Pennsylvania, but they're based out of Denver. And they connect community to school when something is happening that would impact a student's ability to learn. There are some other nuances that I think need to be worked out. One of the concerns that is coming up with educators is how to get students to talk to them.
Okay.
The things that is really rising for me in that developmental relationship piece is just because you come up to a student and say, "How are you doing today?" They're like, "Well, how do I respond when a kid says, 'No, I'm good,' and walks away?"
Hmm,
You can't force a child to tell you something, or even an adult. As I mentioned in the last session, I went through some things in my adult life that I hid from other people too, because that's a natural human thing to do. Only a very small handful of people actually knew. We
right.
can't make people share, but we can consistently show up in an authentic way to show our care and that we're trustworthy, to let them
Mhm.
know that there are others who care. It is going to take time.
Yes.
That goes back to those pauses too, not just pausing for people to breathe and to think about action, but time for that relationship to develop and for the authenticity to rise
Yeah.
before students see an adult as a trusted, caring person.
Mhm.
So that goes back to that build and broaden that you were also
Yep.
talking about
Yep.
earlier, is that
Yep.
relationships too. We can't force that.
I love your emphasis. Trust takes time. It takes time for most of us human beings. We don't necessarily trust easily. So for our students, for our children, it's letting children know through our behavior that we are trustworthy, that we keep our word, that we're men and women of integrity, and we make ourselves available to that child. We don't just inquire once, maybe we check in on a regular basis, not in any way to hover, but just to let them know, I care.
Yes. And so I see this is why I love our conversations because to me, they're dense,
Yeah.
they're rich. And so for those who are following, we started off with possibilities and ideas and new perspectives. But now I feel like we're shifting into possibilities for new pathways in life, trusting relationships to form,
Huh?
uh, identities to form.
Wow.
So we're talking about possibility here in many different contexts, relating it all back to what research says and what I'm seeing as a commonality:
Mhm.
time, consistency.
Consistency is a big one. Do you remember some of the ingredients in developmental relationships?
I do love them.
Well, for our educators, here are the possibilities. Go ahead, Krista.
There are 5 elements, and within those 5 elements of developing this relationship, there are 40 different pieces. These 40 different pieces are reordered into 4 categories. The first is get to know me. And some of those elements fall under there, and that is like be a safe person, listen to me, respect me. And then the next step has to do with a trust. Have it be back and forth that
Mm,
you're learning from me. It's that you trust me to have responsibilities. And then the next part is hold me accountable. It's bidirectional, and I want you to give me ownership, to give me agency, but you're still a guide. Pull me back and protect me. Let me go, but protect me. Open up possibilities for me, expand possibilities. Connect me to people and experiences and places that I didn't imagine could be real for me.
So, for those listening, what Krista just shared, I would suggest you contact her for a few days of professional development on this topic because this works. This is effective. Krista and other colleagues have done this work across the country, and it absolutely is effective. So, please contact for more on this idea.
Thank you. I do want to, when you were talking about our comfort zone and our stretch zone, can you tell me that last zone again?
Panic.
I'm curious because there have been times in my life where I was ready to just jump, and I did jump into panic zone when I left my district, opportunity to go back to school, and I was near the top of the pay scale. I had great benefits, but I felt this desire to learn, to grow, and so I left and I went back and I took a GA position for $15,000 a year. But thankfully, I was able to continue working with you, and so you
Yeah.
helped me be able to supplement some of that to
Right, right.
survive with 2 kids. And so when people are like, "I can't do something," I know what it's like to feel stuck. And so I'm actually curious for you, has there been a time in your life where you've jumped from, like, comfort into the panic?
The biggest jump I've ever made, had worked for the Department of Education for 10 years. In terms of comfort zone, you can't get any more comfortable as an educator. And yet something inside of me was saying, do more. There was something I wanted to create. At that point in time, I was one of a four-person team who had done some very exciting things in Pennsylvania, including creating and bringing student assistance programs to all 501 school districts. And that's how we met. After we had trained the last school district, which was the city of Philadelphia in 1989, I wanted to leave and I wanted to start my own business. That was my dream because there's so many other creative things I wanted to do and opportunities calling me from other states, and I needed to leave all those benefits. I remember at the time, I'm the father of 3, and my special needs daughter had every need imaginable, including multiple medical needs. Talked to my wife about it. We found a way to join the Chamber of Commerce and get basic benefits. And that was that praying, meditating, reflecting every single day in a very disciplined way. So when we make that jump, are you willing to do the hard work? Are you willing to do the discipline? Which I am actually not the most disciplined person in the world. I find those moments when something's really important to me, I do everything needed to create my own business in 1990. And here we are in 2025, we're still doing everything we want to be doing. The thing I love is every dream I have or any dream a colleague or a friend has, the answer is how do we make it happen? There are no limits. That's one of the great joys here. The risk becomes this great joy because of limitless possibilities.
One of the things I had written down is that possibility shows us that there are several doors that we could go through, but it's the passion that helps us walk through that. Now, want to pull on another thread, and that's about Ashley.
Yes.
Ashley had a great impact on perspective for you.
Yes.
Also, am curious how she reshaped what is possible.
We received the diagnosis for the first time where it really hit home. She was about 2.5 months old. We had noticed some lack of focus or just staring straight ahead with not seeming to connect to mom and dad. Now we're talking about a 2.5 month old infant here. The diagnosis was given by the neurologist at Children's Hospital in Philadelphia at the time. What I heard as a young father, your daughter is severely, profoundly retarded. So, two things happen in my brain simultaneously, talking about possibilities. One, my daughter will not be able to do anything normal. My daughter is beautiful. My daughter has all her parts. No one can tell me what her limits will be. I believe in possibilities. Those are the two things in my head. In that moment, there's the gap again, right? Stimulus response. There's the gap.
Just the connection that this goes back to our both and thinking. Both
Yes,
were happening at the same time.
right. And both things can be true for the 39 years of her life. Sandra and I always came from a perspective when we looked at our daughter, did whatever our daughter needed us to do for her. We always came from this perspective of she's a gift. She is a gift. Like every child is a gift, like every human being is a gift. But we really concentrated on that in her non vocal, non physically demonstrative, because she really couldn't move much consciously. She could emanate this aura, this feeling of unconditional love. You felt it. And everyone who was at least semi conscious who came into our house felt it. Many people who would do work projects in my house commented. Our daughter may be medically identified as being multiply handicapped. And she is this incredible gift that when we and other people are around her, we are enhanced as human beings. I'll share a moment with you and our listeners that I don't often share. I was working in Idaho. We were doing a 3-day training in Idaho, up in the panhandle where it's just absolutely gorgeous. We had about 100 Idaho educators. Myself and 2 other colleagues were doing the training. It was a time in my life where I would meditate often. I was up at a really early hour because of the time change. I'm meditating and praying, asking for help for my daughter. She had been having uncontrollable seizure activity, even with the medicine. And at one point, the seizures had gotten so bad, she pushed the 2 front teeth out of her mouth. Came home, all blood all over her. The school cared for our daughter beautifully. I'm praying for healing for my daughter. And I hear this voice. I hear this inaudible voice. So it's a consciousness. A voice says, she's not here to be healed. She's the healer. Let her do her work. I then went around for the rest of my life. Where can my daughter join me in my work? On one occasion, I came to your high school with Ashley and my wife and 2 of the most beautiful young men who were star football players in Micah, took her out of her handicap van, brought her wheelchair down the steep ramp to the front of the auditorium. I'm pretty sure we taught a message of love, as only she could do. And I invited people up to interact with her. Please go ahead.
I had not heard that Idaho story. And I think that when we have those moments of pause and quiet, I'm not good at this myself, but when we have
Mm,
that pause, it allows us to see the possibilities and have a moment to determine our action. And to hear and see things that we might not have seen before or heard before. Ashley being the healer is spot on because I can say that for 20 years of being in her presence, I felt it. And it too reminded me with possibilities when they were saying she wasn't seeing you. I
right.
can tell the listeners from being in your house that when she heard you or Sandra, her face lit up. There was a physical change in her affect and her response to being around people who she knew loved and cared for her. And one of my favorite memories ever was your older son, Josh, dancing with her, moving her wheelchair around to music.
Yeah.
Just the joy that came from
Yeah.
her face with hearing the music, knowing that her loving brother was taking care of her, they were experiencing joy together.
Yes.
Those are possibilities was on the other side of that.
So what you're sharing right now, Krista, I love it because I hope my educator friends that are listening understand this is what's possible for every student. When Krista talks about the joy on my daughter's face, when she talks about her eyes lighting up because someone is caring for her, that's possible for every one of our students. Am I saying you need to love your students? Yes, I am. In
Mhm.
some way. But the work is all about love. That's why we sign up for this stuff. And please understand that is not touchy-feely, airy-fairy. That's hard work. So, again, all my special educators, I wanna tell you how much I love you because you participated in helping keep Ashley alive for 39 years. Think of how hard we all work as educators. Here's how hard my wife worked. Every single morning, change diapers, connect the feeding tube, connect the oxygen, do a half an hour of percussion treatment, give medicine, do it again at noontime, do it again at dinner time, do it again at bedtime, and then monitor uncontrollable seizure activity for 39 years. There's no question in my mind. My daughter lived for 39 years. She was not supposed to live past 2. She lived for 39 years because of love, because of my wife's love, and all the other love that I gave and everyone else gave. And so, yeah, in whatever way you can find your loving expertise, that's what's needed.
Away at the end of this podcast with how do we open up possibility for ourselves and for our students?
Yes.
Breathe,
Yes.
love, showing up, authenticity.
Yeah,
Anything to add to that one?
that's perfect. Do all that Krista just recommended for yourself first. Please. I know your energies are not endless. Do it for yourself, and then it transfers to your children. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. We'll see you on our next episode where we move from possibility to passion.
Thank you for being part of the SEL in EDU family. As you move into the rest of your day, I invite you to notice one small way social emotional learning showed up in your thinking, your relationships, or your work. Until next time, take care of yourself and keep making space for meaningful, connected learning.